Okay, so two things I'm going to cover in this video. How to do the background, how to add a background. You're going to have a couple of choices. You can pick a photo, you can do a gradient or a solid color. I'm also going to talk about these effects that you can add to the letters. Make them stand out, give it a little bit of depth. So here we go. Here's one, the same quote with a plain background. So changing the color should be pretty straightforward. You can go right onto the background. Pick a color that you like. I tend to go for blues. Use the paint bucket tool and dump the color in. You can also use a gradient. You can create your own gradient or use some of these presets. To change the gradient, click on the actual gradient, and you can click on these stops. You can add stops. You can change the color. And you can apply gradients, different types of gradients. Play around a little bit. Lots of variety. If this is too a bit bright, you can hit Command U, and you can adjust the hue. But if it's too bright, lower the saturation. It'll make the colors more gray. You can brighten them up or darken them as well. Another thing you can do, you can add a new layer, and this time you can add a picture. So I found this picture, high resolution, just of a rainbow. You open this also up in Photopea. Excuse me. Use the move tool. Slide it up. And slide it back down. Sorry about that. And you can make the adjustments. Make sure it fills the page. Notice I have it right in front of a gradient. That's okay. Figure out where you want it to be set up. Just getting rid of this other layer. So you could, see how the background has a gradient on it? I'm going to change the background, and I'm just going to change it back to a color, just a solid color. We can do this in a couple of steps here. Okay, so I have that light blue. If I change this background from normal to overlay, what it'll do is it'll overlay this background on top of this background, meaning you'll be able to see the color behind it. Now this is way too bright, so you'll find that if you lower the saturation, and even mess with the lightness, it will affect the look of the image. And it's just how this picture will react to what's behind it. You can also take your background and lower the opacity, which makes it a little bit more transparent. So, you do this if you find that the background is just way too bright, or it stands out and it doesn't allow the words to be seen. All right, now speaking of words, if you want to put an effect on it, you go to the end here and double click. This is where your layer styles are with blending options. Another place you can go to layer, layer style, blending options, same thing. You have a bunch of them, try them out. Bevel and emboss, for example. You have to select it like that. You can see what the word someone does. On the right here, it'll show you a sample as well. A couple of popular ones are bevel and drop shadow. And once again, you can play around with it, see what these properties do, and play around with it until you like it. Now, the problem with this, so if I like this, the way this is set up, you can see it's not set up for any of the other layers. One of the things you can do, you can right click on this layer, excuse me for a second. Okay, sorry. I had to adjust the right click. So if I right click on here, you see this layer style, I can copy it, and then I can right click on a new layer and paste it. So you can see that it'll be applied to all of them. To save me that, you can select all of these layers, and you want to do this when you're all done. In other words, you don't want to make any changes to the words. And what you can do is you could hit Command E and merge them all together. And then go back to these layer styles, play around with them. You want it to be subtle. You don't want these to be really standing out too much. Stroke is an outline. You'll see some other ones that you can certainly explore, but once again, you don't want it to be too crazy, too outlandish. You want it to be pretty subtle. Alright, so you keep working on this until you have an effect that you like. Now, just a reminder, just because you select it doesn't mean that that's all you're going to do. You have to not only check it, but also highlight it, and then here are your properties and your options. You can make the changes. It is a little bit laggy. It's going to take a little while when you're doing this. You have to wait like a couple of seconds. Like I said, it gets a little laggy. When we do this in Photoshop, you won't have that problem. So again, once you like it, that looks good. So you want to save it. File. You want to save it as a PSD if you want to make any changes. But if you're ready to submit it, you're going to export it as a JPEG. Okay.